Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Talk Stars. I am your host, Tim Stars, and today we have a very special interview because we not only have our usual Alec Main. Say hi, Alec.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, hello, Alec. We are very glad to have you back, but we have a very special guest from the classic Hero's Tale journey, The Alchemist. Please welcome the one, the only, Santiago, ladies and gentlemen.
Greetings, Tim.
No, don't make this about me, although I would love to talk about myself. But we are here to get to know you a little more, Santiago. So tell me, what are some major events, some big events that you would be glad to share with us?
Well, for a start, being the hero and living in an ordinary world, as you call it, and all that, my passion really was to travel the world. And so, with the reluctant help of my father, I became a shepherd in order to fulfill that dream, and have always cared for my flock, and was able to go to places I've never seen before.
Yes, and did you get to see many great things?
Well, not really, but I'd like to see the castles and towns where they live. I mean, I've said that before, but I'll say it again, because it just shows how much I just want to see these foreign things, even if it's something as small as that.
Well, that does sound interesting indeed.
You know, I can actually relate to that story, being the hero and all that.
Oh, really? Would you look at that?
Yeah, I've always had this passion to make movies my whole life, and while I haven't made something that can be considered a film per se, I've always had these ideas buzzing in my head for basically my whole life, and I even tried writing some short stories based on those thoughts. I was even to learn a thing or two about writing scripts and whatnot. It's kind of like how Santiago here would like to see their land and how they live and whatnot, because of how we both have this passion to do something in our lives, even if it means doing or seeing the smallest things.
Oh, wow, that's really neat. Okay, anyways, back to who we are really here for. Santiago, what would you say your inspiration to go out and search and find the treasure of the pyramids would be, you know?
Well, I wouldn't really call it an inspiration per se. It was more like a convincing talk from the King of Salem himself. He was actually one of the many people that convinced me to go and search for the pyramids in Egypt. I met a gypsy at first, actually, but when she told me that the strange dreams I had meant that I needed to go to the pyramids and find this special treasure, I was very doubtful and just laughed it off.
It's funny, I had a similar refusal of the call sort of situation in my time.
Oh, wow, another?
Yeah, when I was young and I was telling all of my movie ideas to everyone, they all told me one thing, and that's to write them down and at least just film something with your camera. I was always laughing it off because of how I couldn't actually do it with the tools I had. I kept putting it off because of how I thought I could never be able to do it with the skills I had then. I felt like I couldn't follow my personal legend yet.
I'm sorry, what exactly is a personal legend?
It's basically what you have always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. I think what he's saying is that he scoffed at an idea that actually ended up helping him follow his personal legend, much like I did.
Didn't the king tell you that exact same thing about the definition of a personal legend and all that?
Yes, actually. The king was always the part where I was meeting the mentor figure in my life, and has helped me go on this journey and make me who I am today. He never stayed with me for the whole journey, of course, but his teachings had influenced me in a way that made me able to finish what I started and get me to this point. He even gave me these two stones, Urim and Thummim. These little relics are a real wonder, you know. The king gave them to me so that when I am unable to read the omens, they will help me to do so. And they always have, when I was in a troubled situation, or I just forgot about the journey altogether. The stones would always lead me back on track.
I see what you mean there. I too had a mentor figure in my life.
Man, this feels like a high school English project with how much you can relate to Santiago.
Well, I've had a lot of people that can be considered mentors in my life. My band teacher, my choir teacher, my parents. A lot of people in my life have been that kind of mentor person who teaches me about these things that I'm going to eventually need in real life.
Yeah, and the king wasn't my only mentor either. There was the alchemist himself, and even an Englishman I met at one point.
Yeah, I think it's not about who is teaching you.
Right.
It's about what you're being taught and how that gets you through a nice life and makes sure that you don't end up becoming a terrible person, you know? Like what the alchemist was saying to you when you and him were being taken to that military camp and you were mad at him for throwing away your stuff to these people. And he was saying to you that usually the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives. That was something that ended up helping you in the long run and was able to get you to know how to turn yourself into the wind and make you realize how much more important this journey is necessary in the long run.
Oh, wow. There is so much deep and meaningful dialogue in here than I thought there would be. Well, then I feel I must ask, when did this whole fear of failure and refusal start?
Well, it started when I was crossing the threshold, as you would put it, and I was at first excited to find my personal legend, get this cool sword, and just a whole lot of good things would come to me. Unfortunately, I realized that Egypt was very far away from where I was, and I didn't have enough money to go there. You could say there was a moment of silence so profound that it seemed the city was asleep, because I realized from that moment, and a few others, that the real world was not as magical as I thought. So I decided to work for this crystal merchant for nearly a year in order to get the money I needed to travel to Egypt.
Me too! Yeah, I decided at one point to start making this film that I wanted to solely be based on a video game that I thought was going to be easy to make. Unfortunately, I didn't have much of the proper skills I needed in order to get this film done, and there was a lot more to filming a movie than I knew, so you could say that I too had my worldview crushed. So I too decided to work to get the proper skills necessary to get this film done and out there for the world to see. It just goes to show how a simple change in perspective can affect you in a large way. Because you are trying to realize your personal legend, and you are at a point where you're about to give it all up, all because of a really small thing that happened along the way that gets you stuck at this one point, and you then have to realize how small it really is and how easily it could be solved.
Yes, and in actuality, there was no real evil on this journey. It was more of the fear of failure and everything else that was halting me on my journey, making me think of backtracking down and not finishing this journey and being generally doubtful of my ability to do this mission. I was told by the alchemist that every search begins with beginner's luck and every search ends with the victors being severely tested. I was a person who was just getting lucky at first in my journey, but when I was being tested on my skills, there was nothing that was big enough to stop me except for my own fears and doubts of it.
Exactly! That's what I've encountered too. I wasn't a person or object that was keeping me down. It was my own doubts and fears that were holding me back. I was so afraid that I couldn't make my ideas a reality because I don't have the proper tools or the proper knowledge of how to do so. And I was so afraid that I was never going to fulfill my dreams because of that. Then I realized I just needed to do it. Like when you were stuck in that camp, you were obsessing over not knowing how to turn yourself into the wind, and you were afraid of failing. The alchemist told you, if a person is living out his personal legend, he knows everything he needs to know. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure. I feel like we've already explained that, how that relates to both of us, because once I was able to stop worrying about the little things that hold me back, and once you were able to stop worrying about how to not turn yourself into the wind, and that would hold you back, we were then able to get those obstacles in our path out of the way and just move on.
You know, I've really been enjoying talking with you guys so far, but I think what everybody's really here for, what they're dying to hear right now, is the truly exciting part. Yes, everybody in the audience knows what I'm talking about. You know, when you finally find the treasure. Yeah.
Oh, well, really, the closest thing I've had to a sort of ordeal or true challenge along this journey is when I finally found the pyramids and I was basking in its glory, see? And I was standing there, thinking about how far I went and how I finally got to this point. So I began digging and digging until these two guys came to me.
Here it comes.
And so they were starting to ask me questions of how did you get here, or why are you digging in this spot? And they were just beating me down and taking my gold and questioning me until I finally came out and said I was looking for the treasure of the pyramids. They then decided to leave me, but before they did, the leader came back to me as I was swollen and beat up and said to me, "You're not going to die. You'll live. You'll learn that a man shouldn't be so stupid. 2 years ago, right here on this very spot, I had a recurrent dream too. And he told me about his dream and how it told him to find treasure at a faraway place as well. He left me there after he told me about how he decided not to follow that dream. So I got up and continued digging."
What? Where's the excitement in that?
That's the thing. The excitement comes from how you would have thought that I would be getting up and realizing that my journey had no meaning and might have been a hoax all along. But the thing is, I didn't. I didn't give up after that story, and I continued digging until I found the treasure. Just goes to show that if you are committed to what you're looking for, then you're gonna be at a point where you shouldn't ever give up.
Where's the action? Where's the near-death experiences? Where? How did your book get so popular if there's nothing that screams interesting?
I think you're missing the point, Tim. The interesting part of the book is how there really is no evil in it. It's a book that's built on relatability to the person who reads it and how they can relate to my experiences of an event where it seems all hope is lost. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic fight with a demon. It could be the battle between your inner self, and it can take as long as 5 minutes. I bet Alec over here can relate to that, don't you?
Oh yes, 'cause we haven't heard of him recently.
Actually, yeah, I really can.
Oh boy, you can? Wow! Who would have guessed that? Go on then. Go on. Tell us how much you can relate to the story. It's not like I was planning on getting my paycheck anyways.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Tim. The part of me that is able to relate to this moment from Santiago was helping you make this.
What?
This whole talk show you have. Do you even know how much I've had to work to get this before we first broadcast this. Even though I can present another story where I had to work around the limitations of that movie I was working on, I unfortunately haven't had an ending to that yet. Here, I can officially say that I have been the one who set up the props, got the stars on, made the suits for you. I even wrote the script you're reading right now. No matter what you say, I still got this done. I'm still getting part of the pay. Even though I cut the first broadcast a little bit close, I still won. And now I can move on knowing fully well that I have made at least something of my life and choices.
That's so touching. Sorry, Alec, but we've run out of time. Though I do have to admit, you make a fine public speaker. Stay tuned next time, folks. We're going to be interviewing Guy Montag from Fahrenheit 451. That's it for this show. Thanks a lot, folks, for tuning in, even though you're giving me a better chance of having a paycheck. And I'll see you all next time. Good night, folks.